off to Castle Rheinberg. Castle Rheinberg is located about 8 kilometers northeast of the town of Lorch on the Rhine, and just above the lovely picturesque valley of the river Wisper, which is flowing down the Wisper-dale coming from the Taunus range.
The Wisper flows down a side valley of the UNESCO World Heritage Site known as the Upper Middle Rhine Valley. We are close here to the northwestern border of the Rheingau, an area that has been well known as a vine-producing region at least since the Roman times. Down in the valley, its green fortification, the impenetrable mega hedge, locals call the Gebück, crossed the Wisper and went up the hill west from here on its last stretch, back down towards the River Rhine and the western border of the Rheingau. When this fortress here was first built is as obscure as its later demise. We have first records from about 1165, but some structure could have been up here much earlier. In his 1902 book about historic buildings in the Rheingau, Ferdinand Ludmer describes everything pretty much as we see it today, except for much less vegetation, as seen in his drawing of the southeast.
If you climb up here, you will appreciate how good a defense the very location of such a hill castle was. The background sound is an interesting mixture, created on one hand by lovely songbirds and on the other by Messrs. Pratt, Whitney, Rolls and Royce. This is the plateau where, back in the day, a massive drawbridge would have been, or would have landed rather. And right in front of me is the colossal pillar of that bridge, connecting the plateau where I'm standing to the outer bailey of the castle. We've made it up to the outer bailey. I was just stepping across the imaginary drawbridge. Right now there's just a void leading to that massive bridge pillar. And in front of me is a lovely arch which would bring us into the main courtyard. Behind me rises the massive old keep. We are now in the upper courtyard, which is the largest open space of the entire structure. Somewhere here there's supposed to be a well, probably over there. There's some deep ditch here, but I think that's too deep and too large. And there's a hole over there, which doesn't tell us much, but we're going to go and have a look at it. And then it's up the hill, off to the keep, see what we find. And over here is the little hole I've spoken about, which is probably what we're looking for, although by now filled in, barely recognizable, as these things go, especially on camera. Now we'll make our way up to the keep. Steep rubble heap. Or I would imagine stairs would have been in the olden days. Need to watch our step a bit here. Not a bad structure. Down here in the dark is what some believe to be Possibly an old water storage. A thunderstorm is raising its ominous voice in the background. Don't know if you can hear that. Let's hope we're not going to be caught in it. Keep to the right, but I don't think we can get through there. All the way around. And now I think I know where to go.
The highest and certainly oldest part of the castle is the keep. We can still make out 3 floors. It has an almost square footprint, well, slightly trapezoid actually, and with a built surface of 7 by 7 meters and walls of up to 2 meter thickness would have been way too cramped to actually live in. Still, we can see fireplaces and niches with seats up there. It would have been the last refuge in case of a breach of the outer walls of the castle.
Now, what a sight. The arched entrance opposite of us is a later addition. This would have been completely closed. Access somewhere through the first floor, possibly right behind me. The wooden lintels of the windows are mentioned in a book from 1904, 1905, I believe. So they're at least that old, and I believe they would have been part of the original structure or part of when this particular part of the castle was constructed. Here we have the opening to a fireplace, and on the other side you can see a window with seats. Through the archway we come to a very small plateau. Over there to the west we have the location of the Aachener Schanze. We're probably looking right at it at the moment. This is a structure built by the Archbishop of Mainz for the siege in 1279, I believe. Well, there we are. The first drops of rain are falling, and in front of me it looks really horrible. On the other hand, that's to the southeast. Should that be coming here? Oh, it doesn't sound good. The plan was that I'd be sitting here and tell you a bit about the importance of this castle, how it came about, what we know about its construction, what we know about its demise, very little actually, and how the name of Rheinberg is significant for the Rheingau. I'm not sure how far I'll get, but behind me now is a really horrible thunderstorm and it's making some quite bad noises. Still, we're not in the high mountains here, so I've decided to stick it out and see how far I'll get. The Rheingrafen, the Counts of Rhine. Could you cut it out for a moment back there? The Counts of Rhine, the Rheingrafen, were the stewards of the Rheingau back in the days when the Rheingau belonged to the king. The Rheingau itself was then gifted to the Archbishop of Mainz through the gift of Verona. I'm liking those noises less and less, and it's getting quite dark. I think, given that it's about 20 minutes back to the car, I should try to be not either completely soaked or roasted to a cinder by a bolt of lightning. But this is quite an impressive piece of wall.
Around here we have recorded sightings of a cute little plant with nice purple flowers, the lesser periwinkle, or in German, kleines Immergrün. It's pretty and very unassuming, but significant in the sense that its home really is southern Europe and Anatolia, and it spreads only through being actively planted. That makes it a sign for human habitation, in cases where you haven't got obvious massive stone structures like this. When the castle was finally given up, we do not know. Just a few dates about the latter years have been recorded. We know that in 1471 the castle still had a chapel which was looked after by a priest. For 1531 we have records of joint ownership by 15 families. We also know that by the end of the 18th century the castle was definitely abandoned and left to decay. That's about it. But in other terms, Rheinberg is actually quite significant. It has got its name from the Rheingrafen, the counts of the Rhine. They were the stewards of the Rheingau even before the gift of Verona. While we head up north a few hundred meters to the siege castle Bliedeneck, let's have a brief chat about the gift of Verona. When Otto I, who is called the Great, died in the year 973, he had been King of East-Franconia for 37 years. Proclaimed Holy Roman Emperor by Pope John XII in 962, he had revived that particular title for the last decade of his regency. Otto had arranged for his young son to be proclaimed co-emperor in 967 by Pope John XIII, and so, at the age of just 12, the future Otto II was designated successor to the East-Franconian throne. In 972 he married Theophanu, niece of the Byzantine emperor, who, although only 12 years old at the time, was proclaimed Holy Roman Empress by an obliging pope in that same year. So, when Otto the Great died in the following year, Otto II found himself in as stable a position as successor as he could wish for in those rough times. When he died 10 years later, at the age of only 28, he left behind a 3-year-old Otto III, who himself would have only a short regency after coming of age. Until then, the empire was reigned by his mother Theophanu and his grandmother Adelheid, with at least substantial influencing of Archbishop Williges of Mainz. All in all, a period of relative peace, albeit for only 15-odd years. It was at the Court Council of Verona, 983, where Otto II managed to convince the other powers in East Franconia to accept his 3-year-old son as his successor. He wasn't as powerful and popular as his father Otto the Great had been, and one of the people who gave him much-needed support was Williges, Archbishop of Mainz. Otto thanked him by gifting the Rheingau to the Archbishopric of Mainz, and so the modern history of our lovely Rheingau here took an important turn in the year 983. Before then, the Counts of Rhine who lived up here were in charge on behalf of the king, so this obscure little ruin is historically a bit more significant than one might think. After that transition, the Rheingrafen continued to act as stewards, but now on behalf of the bishop. All went more or less well until they had a massive falling out about the heritage of the Counts of Sponheim, which ended with Rheinberg here being besieged in 1279.
Here, some 500 meters north and 75 meters above of Rheinberg, we come to the old fort of Bliedeneck. This is a small fort built by the Archbishop of Mainz in 1279 for the siege of Rheinberg. A similar fortress was built about 300 meters to the southwest of us here, called the Aachener Schanze, the Aachener Castle. The old name of Bliedeneck almost certainly refers to the position of a large trebuchet. It would have been just about the right distance and height to put Castle Rheinberg under fire. Bliede is the old German word for trebuchet.
In 1280, the Archbishop had won, Rheinberg was severely damaged, and the Rheingrafen had to leave for good. They found new dwellings up the river Nahe.